The sky of Talvern Prime was dark blue, with two moons shining softly above the tall alien buildings. Jack Walker, a human engineer from Earth, looked around the strange restaurant, confused but curious. Everything smelled like spices and burning stone. He sat at a round table made of crystal, tapping his fingers nervously. Across from him sat Arissa, tall and proud, with smooth violet skin and bright yellow eyes. She wore battle leathers that shimmered like oil, and her long silver hair was tied in a braid down her back. She didn't smile, but she watched him carefully, like a lion watching prey. This was not just a dinner for her. It was something more serious. "Are you enjoying the food?" Jack asked, picking at something that looked like red jelly worms. Arissa tilted her head. "It is edible," she said, "but I came here to judge you, not the food." Jack laughed, thinking she was joking. "Well, I hope I pass the test," Arissa blinked. "You do not yet understand, do you?" Jack frowned. "Understand what?" She leaned in slightly. "This is not just a meal, Jack Walker. This is a court table, where a female may test a potential mate." Jack nearly choked on his drink. "Wait, what? I thought this was just dinner." Arissa narrowed her eyes. "For your kind, perhaps, but for the Volari, a female does not waste time. I do not dine with weaklings." Jack laughed again, but this time it sounded a little nervous. Okay, no pressure," he said, wiping his hands. "But if this is a test, I hope there's no written exam." The server arrived, tall and thin with insect-like arms, and handed them the glowing bill scroll. Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out a few local credits, placing them gently on the crystal table. Then he smiled and said the words that would change everything. "Let's split the bill." The room went silent. Arissa froze, her hand halfway to her cup. Her yellow eyes stared at him like he'd just insulted her family. "Split," she said slowly, her voice cold. "Did you say split?" Jack nodded, confused. "Yeah, I mean, it's fair, right? We both ate." Arissa stood up so fast the table shook. Her chair scraped back, and every head in the restaurant turned toward them. She spoke loudly, her voice like steel. "Real males provide food. Real males honor the female with his offering." Jack looked around, suddenly realizing something was very wrong. "I didn't mean to offend," he said, trying to calm her. "On Earth, this is normal. We share things." Arissa slammed her hand down on the table, her sharp nails making the crystal crack slightly. "I am not from Earth," she growled, "and I do not share with males who cannot provide." She turned sharply and walked out of the restaurant, her boots echoing against the marble floor. Jack sat there stunned, holding his half of the bill. The insect server slowly reached out and took the money, whispering, "You may want to run, human, outside." Arissa stood under the moonlight, her fists clenched and her face hot with shame. She had told her sisters she would try the human, see if the stories were truth, that they were clever, strong in strange ways, and respectful. But this one had insulted her. "Split the bill," she whispered angrily to herself. "Like I'm his equal, like I don't deserve tribute." Back inside, Jack finally stood up and walked out, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well," he said to himself, "that could have gone better." He didn't see the glowing mark on the crystal table. Arissa had left her seal of judgment behind. To her people, it meant only one thing: challenge and Jack. He had no idea what he'd just started. 2 days passed, and Jack tried to forget the strange dinner with Arissa. He told himself she was just too different, that it was a cultural misunderstanding. But deep down, something about her sharp eyes and cold pride stayed in his mind. He kept thinking about that last look she gave him before walking away, like he had failed some test he didn't even know he was taking. On the third morning, just as Jack entered the repair bay where he worked, alarms rang near the front gate. His co-workers froze, and one of them whispered, "Uh-oh, noble Valari arrival." Everyone backed away from the main door. Jack blinked in confusion till the massive metal doors opened and Orissa walked in. Wearing full battle gear, her armor shimmered dark purple and her face showed no emotion. In her hand, she held a rolled scroll glowing with golden ink. She marched up to Jack in front of everyone, unrolled the scroll, and spoke in a voice that echoed through the hangar. "I, Orissa, of House Veliana, bring formal notice of proving to Jack Walker, male of Earth, for the offense of disrespect during sacred court table." Everyone gasped. Jack took a step back, looking around. Is this a joke? Orissa didn't blink. "You have been challenged, as custom allows. You must now demonstrate your worth as a potential mate." Jack blinked hard. "Look, I didn't mean to insult you. I just thought we were grabbing food." She took one slow step closer. "Valeri, don't grab food. Human," one of the engineers whispered behind Jack. "Don't refuse her, man. It's worse if you say no." Jack sighed, scratching his head. "What exactly do I have to do?" Orissa handed him a sealed envelope. "You will be taken to the open market of trials. You will be given basic resources, and your task is to gather and prepare a meal that satisfies both Valari taste and tradition." Jack stared at her. "That's it? Just shopping and cooking?" Orissa gave a cold smile. "If you think it is simple, perhaps you are not as clever as the stories say." 2 hours later, Jack found himself dropped in the middle of a massive alien market with smells, colors, and noises that made his head spin. He was given a pouch of strange coins, a list of ingredients written in Valari runes he couldn't read, and a warning. "You have 2 hours," said the tall official beside him. "Impress the judges or walk away in shame." Jack looked around in panic, then took a deep breath. "All right," he muttered. "Let's human this thing up." He walked stall to stall, asking questions, pointing at things, laughing with merchants instead of bargaining with strength like Valari males. Jack used charm, jokes, and clever trades. He swapped useless items for rare fruits, offered to fix a broken hovercart in exchange for spice, and even juggled fire plums to entertain children, earning him free herbs from a grateful mother. All this time, Orissa stood on a nearby balcony, arms crossed, watching. She had expected him to fail quickly, to insult someone or beg for help. But Jack moved through the crowd like a strange kind of warrior, one who fought with words and kindness still. She refused to be impressed. As the sun dipped low, Jack returned to the cooking area, a pile of items in his arms and soot on his face. The other Valari competitors watched him with amusement. They had raw meat and glowing stones. But Jack had brought soft greens, sweet oils, and even a few human ingredients from his own bag. He lit the firestone the wrong way at first, burned his fingers twice, and spilled a sauce that almost set a judge's robe on fire. But somehow, in the end, the food smelled. Incredible warm steam rose from a mix of seared leaf, honeyroot oil, and soft layered bread, topped with crisp leaf curls that shimmered blue under the light. The judges tasted it silently, then turned toward Orissa. She remained still, unreadable. Finally, one judge nodded. "Unusual, but worthy." Jack smiled, tired and sweating. "So, did I pass?" Orissa looked at him, her voice flat. "You survived the first proving." Then she added quietly, "But the next will not be so easy." Jack opened his mouth, but Orissa was already walking away. This time, she didn't storm off in anger. This time, she walked slower, her steps thoughtful, and for the first time, she wondered if maybe this strange, bill-splitting human was not so simple after all. The sun burned low over the towers of Valarnes, painting the city in warm gold and soft shadows. Jack sat on the edge of a stone fountain, rubbing his aching legs and wondering what kind of dating customs he had stumbled into. He had survived the strange market test, somehow cooked something that didn't kill anyone, and yet He still had no idea if Arissa hated him or something else. Suddenly, a message flickered on his wrist device, glowing in alien script with a translated line underneath. Prepare for second trial. Meet at the Firestone Square by dusk. No instructions. No explanation. Just a command. Jack groaned. Dating here feels like boot camp at dusk. He arrived at Firestone Square, a large open area filled with glowing red stones and tall fire bowls. Valari nobles stood in a circle, dressed in formal armor and cloaks that glittered like stars. And there she was, Arissa, standing at the center, proud and silent. Her silver braid now lined with a golden thread. An elder stepped forward, eyes glowing from age implants. In Valari tradition, the elder said, trial 2 tests, instinct. Reaction and intent, the male must feed the female. Not with a meal but with gesture. Jack blinked. What kind of gesture are we talking about? Before anyone answered, a servant placed a bowl of strange fruit slices before him. Soft. Steaming slightly, the elder motioned toward Arissa, who remained seated like a queen on a stone bench. You must offer her food with your hands. You must know when to give and how much. If you misunderstand, she will stop the ritual. Jack's heart raced. All eyes were on him now, watching how he moved, how he touched, how he read her body language. He picked up a piece of the fruit, warm and slippery, and stepped toward Arissa. She did not look at him, but her jaw was tense, her posture stiff. He knelt slowly, offering the fruit without speaking. She looked at the piece, then at him. Their eyes met for a brief second. He could feel the tension, like she was daring him to mess it up. Carefully, he moved the fruit closer, waiting just a heartbeat longer than expected. She opened her mouth slightly, and he placed the piece gently between her lips. A breath passed, and she chewed slowly, eyes still locked with his. Whispers moved through the crowd. This was not how Valari males behaved. They were forceful. Proud, bold in gesture. Jack was quiet, soft, patient. He picked another piece, this time dipping it slightly into a blue sauce he'd seen nearby. Again, he offered it gently, reading her expression. And again, she accepted it, slower this time. As if curious now, not just testing. After the 5th offering, she leaned back, signaling the ritual was over. The elder stepped forward, voice low but firm. He completes the 2nd proving. Jack stood, hands sticky and heartbeat pounding. He expected a nod or a word from Arissa, but she simply looked away. Still, there was no anger in her eyes now, only thought. That night, back in his room, Jack sat on his cot, staring at the ceiling. What is this? He whispered. Test a game? Or am I actually courting an alien warrior princess? At the same time, across the noble sector, Arissa sat alone in her chamber, holding one of the leftover fruit slices in her hand. Her fingers touched where his had been, her thoughts tangled in ways she didn't like. He was nothing like Valari males, and that was exactly why she couldn't stop thinking about him. In her mind, something had shifted for the first time. The challenge no longer felt like punishment. It felt like a path, and she wasn't sure where it led. The air smelled of smoke and sweet oil. Torches burned all around the great hall carved into living stone. Dozens of nobles sat along curved tables, their faces lit by orange firelight and expectation. Tonight was the Feast of Firestones, a sacred Valari ritual where chosen pairs sat side by side, sharing food before the High Council. It was meant for bonded warriors, mates in trial, or those seeking final judgment. And somehow, Jack had been given a seat beside Arissa. He hadn't asked for it, hadn't planned for it, but the council had decided he had passed 2 of her people's oldest tests. Now he was no longer a stranger, he was a candidate. He looked ridiculous in his borrowed robe, a heavy velvet thing with sharp shoulders and gold rings. Beside him, Arissa wore something different too, not armor, but a long woven cloak. Her braid wrapped in green silk. She didn't look at him, but her hand rested on the table just close enough for him to feel her warmth. Valari tradition demanded silence before the first serving. The food was placed on silver trays carved with battle scenes. Glowing softly under the firelight, Jack saw things he didn't recognize: black root salad, stone-baked meat slices, blue mist fruit in glass bowls. Then the elder stood and said, "Tonight, we witness the third stage of proving. The human shall serve, and the female shall accept or deny." Jack cleared his throat quietly, glancing at Arissa. Her face was calm, unreadable. He reached for a piece of soft, bread-like root, dipped it in honey oil, and gently offered it to her. She didn't move for a second, then leaned forward and took it without breaking eye contact. A murmur went through the hall. He served her again, this time with 2 fingers holding a strip of fire meat. Again, she accepted, slow and precise. Valari males usually made the feast a show, stuffing food in proudly, sometimes even tossing meat in the air like predators. But Jack moved carefully, reading every flick of her eyes, every shift in her shoulders. Then came the test hidden within the ritual. A small plate of emberberries was placed before him, teeny glowing fruit that could burn the tongue if unripe. He picked one up, saw the soft shine on its skin, and remembered what the merchant had told him at the market: unripe ones glow too brightly, ripe ones shimmer softly. He chose carefully, placed the softest one between his fingers, and held it up. Arissa hesitated. Her lips parted just slightly. The whole hall was watching. Silent, she leaned forward, slowly, and took the berry between her teeth. When she swallowed, her shoulders relaxed just a little. It wasn't just food, and Jack was starting to understand that. This was a language, a quiet war of gestures, a slow dance of meaning. Arissa finally turned her head toward him and whispered, "You remember the glow?" Jack smiled slightly. "I remember a lot of things." A small sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, but something close. It disappeared quickly, replaced by her usual calm expression. But it had been real. The feast ended with the lighting of the final firestone. Each pair touched a glowing stone together to show unity, even if temporary. Arissa placed her fingers on the stone without hesitation, and Jack followed. For a moment, the light bathed both their faces in golden warmth, and time slowed down. The elders watched, speaking in low voices. The nobles whispered to one another. Jack didn't know what came next, but he knew one thing: he wasn't just a guest anymore, and Arissa was no longer trying to push him away. Later that night, as he left the hall, one of the younger Valari warriors bumped into him and muttered, "She fed you 6 times. That's more than formality." Jack blinked, confused. What does that mean? But the warrior just smirked and walked away. Behind him, standing in the shadow of a firebowl, Arissa watched him leave, her lips pressed together like she was trying not to speak. Then, quietly, to herself, she whispered, "Maybe he's not pretending." The night wind rushed through the stone corridors of Alarnes, carrying the scent of ash and iron. Jack was walking back to the guest quarters when the sound of clashing steel echoed behind him. He turned just in time to see 2 armored figures step out from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, and clearly not here to talk. One of them tossed down a metal glove, an old gesture of challenge. The other pointed at Jack, voice sharp and full of venom. "You've insulted the bloodline of Valari, human. You play games with a noble house, and now you will answer." Jack raised his hands. "Whoa! Hey, I didn't insult anyone. Huh, I'm just trying to survive these space states." The taller warrior growled. "You touched Arissa's firestone. You served her fruit 6 times. You crossed into sacred territory." Jack blinked. "I just gave her a snack." The second warrior stepped forward. You challenged tradition. Now tradition challenges you. The next morning, Jack was dragged to a large public square carved into red rock. The sky above glowing with storm clouds. A crowd had gathered, including council members, soldiers. Even Orissa herself, standing. Alone on the highest platform, the elder announced the terms. He will enter the Razorthorn Forest. 30 minutes before the challenger, if he returns with a marking stone from the sacred tree, he proves his worth. Jack looked at the map. The forest marked in deep red, filled with twisted trees and crawling things. He swallowed hard. So, I just have to go into a haunted forest and not die. The elder nodded once. That is correct. No weapons were allowed, just instinct. Jack was dropped off by shuttle at the forest edge, fog curling around his boots, thorns twitching in the wind like they were alive. He stepped in, heart pounding. Following the narrow path of broken stone, branches clawed at his sleeves. Sharp leaves cut across his arms, and strange sounds moved in the trees above him. Twice he nearly slipped down steep slopes, and once he saw eyes in the dark, blinking and vanishing. But he kept going, because something inside him refused to turn back. Far behind him, the challenger entered the forest with a blade hidden in. His boot, he had no intention of waiting, no interest in fair trials. He was there to make the human disappear. To end the embarrassment Orissa had brought upon noble tradition. Jack found the sacred tree just as the sun began to fade. A massive old beast covered in silver bark. He touched the trunk, then reached up and pulled one of the glowing blue marking stones from its highest branch, but as he turned to leave, something slammed into him from behind. He rolled across the mossy ground, pain shooting through his back. The Valari noble stood above him, blade drawn, eyes cold. You should have walked away, human. Jack raised his hands again. Wait, this wasn't part of the rules. The noble slashed downward, but Jack rolled to the side, grabbing a thick branch and swinging it hard into the attacker's knee. It cracked loudly. But the noble didn't stop. Jack backed away, tripping over roots, blood running down his arm. Then a voice rang out from the tree sharp, commanding, furious. Enough, Orissa dropped down from the canopy like lightning. Her blade drawn, armor scratched from thorns. She stood between them, eyes burning. This was never about proving strength. She shouted, "You turned it into a hunt." The noble sneered. "He stains our ways." Orissa pointed her blade at his throat. "You shame them more." The elder council arrived minutes later, guided by tracking drones. The attacker was arrested, but Jack was barely standing, bloodied and shaking. As the med team patched him up, Orissa knelt beside him. Her voice quieter now. "You fought, even when you had nothing, even when you were alone." Jack laughed softly. "Yeah, well, I'm really bad at quitting." She looked at him, then reached out and touched his wrist, where the marking stone still glowed. "You brought it back." "I said I would," he whispered. "Didn't want to get kicked off your weird alien dating show." For the first time, Orissa smiled fully. Not just a hint, but real. And somewhere deep in her warrior heart, something fragile and unfamiliar began to grow. The med drone hovered low as it stitched Jack's torn arm with warm blue light. He winced, biting his lip, trying not to show how much it hurt. Nearby, Orissa sat still, watching him with a strange look in her eyes, like she couldn't decide whether to scold him or protect him. The council had cleared the square, and the attacker was gone, taken away in silence. Now only the torchlight remained, flickering shadows on the stone, dancing between them. Jack tried to sit up, but Orissa gently pushed him back. "With one hand, you're reckless," she said softly. "You should have run." Jack smiled weakly. "And leave you to deal with Swordboy alone." "No way. You didn't know I was there," she said, more quietly now. Jack looked up at her. its voice barely above a whisper. Didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was warm, stretched like a soft thread. Connecting their breath, she looked down at his injured hand. Then, without a word, pulled off one of her gloves and pressed her fingers against his. Jack didn't move. Her skin was warmer than he expected, rough from training. But there was something delicate in the way she touched him now. Slowly, she leaned closer, her forehead almost touching his. "In my people's eyes," she whispered, "you've completed the proving." Jack raised an eyebrow. "So what happens now?" She didn't answer, not right away. Instead, she took his hand, pulled it gently, and helped him stand. She didn't let go that night. She brought him to a quiet part of the palace, her private garden, hidden behind silver-leafed trees and soft glowing water stones. They sat beneath a curved crystal dome, the stars above flickering through the clear sky. Orissa removed her armor piece by piece, not seductively, but with intention, as if letting go of a heavy role she'd carried too long. Jack watched quietly, not staring, just listening to the silence between them. She sat beside him in a simple wrap. Nothing fancy, nothing royal, just herself. "When I was young," she said, "I was told human males were soft. Weak, selfish." Jack chuckled. "Well, 2 out of 3 might be true." She didn't smile this time, only turned her head slowly to look at him. "But then you gave, again and again, even when it hurt." "I didn't do it to impress you." Jack replied, "I did it because you mattered." Her eyes shimmered, just a little. Catching the starlight, she leaned closer. Breath soft against his cheek. "Then take this moment," she whispered, "not as a test. Not as a proving, just as us." Jack nodded, then leaned in, touching his forehead to hers. It was quiet, no music, no grand speech. Only two warriors, one human, one Valari choosing each other not by force, but by choice, and as they sat there, close and quiet. The wind moved gently through the trees. No crowd, no judgment, just a bond forming in the stillness. And for the first time, Orissa allowed herself to close her eyes while resting against someone, not as a fighter, not as a noble, but as a woman who finally understood what strength could feel like when it was wrapped in gentleness. The sun rose slowly over Valarnes, casting golden light through the high crystal towers. Bird-like creatures soared between balconies, their wings flashing with color as the city woke. Jack stood by the wide window of the guest quarters, watching the day begin. He had never meant to come here and change anything. He had only wanted to survive. Maybe make a few friends, maybe understand another world. But somehow, through challenges, mistakes, pain, and quiet gestures, he had become something more, behind him. The door opened, soft steps moved across the floor. He didn't need to turn to know it was her. Orissa stood beside him, wearing light armor now. Simpler than before, her braid undone and resting over one shoulder. "They want to name you," she said, her voice calm. "The council, they want to give you a Valari title." Jack looked at her, surprised. "A title?" "Why?" She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "Because you've done what no outsider has done. You earned it. Not by power, but by something stronger." He stepped closer to her. "Let me guess. I'll be called the Fruit Boy. That time." She did smile. "Just a little. No, they want to call you Kareth. It means the one who gives without asking." Jack looked out at the city again, then back at her. "And what does it mean? Between us?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into the fold of her armor and pulled out a small chain with a glowing stone hanging from it, the same type of stone from the sacred tree. She placed it in his hand, closing his fingers over. This means," she said, "that I choose you, not as a trial, not as a proving, but as mine." Jack stared at the stone, then looked into her golden eyes. "Are you sure?" He whispered, "I'm still the guy who asked to split the bill." She stepped closer, pressed her forehead gently against his, and whispered, "And I'm still the warrior who expected meat and submission. You gave me neither, yet gave me." Everything outside, bells began to ring across the city, marking the start of the Union Hour. Below, people gathered for the ceremony they hadn't been told was coming. But news had spread of the human who passed the trials, who stood unarmed in a forest, who fed a noblewoman with care instead of pride. As Jack and Orissa stepped onto the sky bridge before the gathered crowd, a silence swept over them all. Valari warriors lowered their weapons in respect, and council elders placed their palms across their hearts. Jack didn't speak, didn't wave. He simply reached for Orissa's hand, and when she didn't pull away, the crowd erupted in a sound that was part cheer, part ancient war cry. Later that night, as they sat together under the same stars that had watched over them since the beginning, Jack turned to her and asked quietly, "So what happens now?" Orissa leaned against him, eyes half closed. "Now," she said softly, "now we eat, and this time, I'll pay." He laughed, shaking his head. "You know, I'll still try to split it." She closed her eyes, smiling faintly. "I'm counting on it, and somewhere, far from Earth, in a world built on strength and fire, a quiet human gesture had changed a warrior's heart forever.